සුපිරි එලියක් වෙළඳපොලේ අඩුම මිලකට රුපියල් 160යි.
Tonight, suggested improvements. An interim report on previous Human Rights Commission recommendations presented to the President. Call for changes in PTA implementation. Plugging the leaks. Chairman of the Committee on Public Accounts exposes long overdue corporate tax payment delays.
There is provision for them to appeal 3 times to the Inland Revenue Department. At the end of that period, the matter is then taken up in courts also.
Consumer benefit. Mill owners reach agreement to buy Yalla season paddy at government stipulated prices. Take what you get. 2 million Sinopharm doses expected tomorrow as experts advise against picking and choosing vaccines. All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Wednesday, the 21st of July, 2021.
ඒ කියන්නේ ලයිෆ් බෝයි අවස්ථා 10කදී ලෙඩ රෝග 10කට හේතු වන වෛරස් ඇතුළු විෂ බීජවලට එරෙහිව සටන් කරනවා කියලා.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammik. Now, the Commission appointed to appraise the findings of previous commissions and committees on human rights has made several recommendations on the implementation of the Prevention of Terrorism Act. The committee's interim report was handed over to President Gotabaya Rajapaksa yesterday. It rejects the idea of abolishing the PTA, but recommends that amendments be made to the Act after studying anti-terrorism legislation used by the United Kingdom and other states.
The interim report of the Presidential Commission appointed to examine decisions made by previous committees and commissions that probed alleged human rights violations was handed over to President Gotabaya Rajapaksa yesterday. Consisting of Supreme Court Justice AHMD Nawaz as chairman, retired Inspector General of Police Chandra Fernando, retired District Secretary Nimal Abesiri, and former Mayor of Jaffna Yogeshwari Patkunaraja, the Commission's interim report has made several recommendations relating to the controversial Prevention of Terrorism Act. While disagreeing with the abolishment of the PTA, it suggests that amendments be made to the Act after studying anti-terrorism legislation used by the United Kingdom and other states. The Commission has also submitted a list of recommended amendments to 3 sections of the Act, namely Sections 9, 11 and 13, aimed at the implementation of the Prevention of Terrorism Act in a more democratic manner. In terms of Section 9 of the Act dealing with detention orders, the Commission advises that suspects detained for 3 or more months must have charges filed against them, if any, and their cases concluded at a faster pace. With regards to Section 11 dealing with the Defence Minister's power to order the restriction of a suspect's movements, the Commission suggests that suspects be held either under house arrest or restricted to their hometowns under special security instead of in prison. Further, in relation to Section 13 that calls for the appointment of a board to advise the President on the implementation of the Act, the Commission has stressed the importance of diversity, advising that it consists of a minimum of 3 members representative of the country's main communities. The interim report also says that the government's policy should be to work towards achieving accountability, human resource development and lasting peace and reconciliation through engagement with the United Nations and its related organizations. In addition, the Commission has also advised the government to be committed to resolving issues within the framework of the country's democratic legislation and to ensure justice and reconciliation through necessary constitutional amendments. The Commission plans to conclude the compilation of its final report within a period of 6 months.
අඩසේ වසකට වැඩි ජනතා විශ්වාසය නව සංයෝගයකින් රයිනෝ රෝෆිං සහ සීලිං ෂීට්.
Muslims around the world are observing the festival of Eid al-Adha today, also known as the Festival of Sacrifice, in the shadow of the pandemic. For a second in a row, devotees across the world, as well as here at home, were compelled by the ongoing pandemic to confine themselves to their homes and engage in religious observances.
Eid al-Adha, or the Festival of Sacrifice, coincides with the climax of HAJJ, the sacred pilgrimage to Mecca which millions of Muslims undertake each year. For a second consecutive year, the pandemic has taken a toll on the festival, which is typically marked by communal prayers, large social gatherings and feasts. This year, only 60,000 vaccinated Saudi citizens or residents of Saudi Arabia have been allowed to perform the Hajj, preventing Muslims from other countries from fulfilling the Islamic obligation. Here at home, celebrations have been largely scaled back as the country is grappling with a third wave of the novel coronavirus. Accordingly, the Colombo Grand Mosque stated that Hajj celebrations in the country will be conducted in line with the existing COVID-19 guidelines. Religious activities were performed at mosques across the island with the participation of a limited number of people. Some devotees confined themselves to their homes and engaged in religious observances. Releasing an official message for the festival, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa wished the Muslims a Hajj feast that makes way for spiritual liberation with divine intimacy. He reminded the devotees to engage in rituals by paying special attention to the COVID-19 restrictions put in place for the safety and social well-being of people. Meanwhile, in his message, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa expressed belief that the pandemic-induced obstacles for pilgrims to perform Hajj will not hinder the values of peace, brotherhood and equality Hajj has to offer. He requests all to work together in accordance with health guidelines in order to eradicate COVID-19. Meanwhile, leader of the opposition Sajid Premadasa also extended his wishes on the occasion of Hajj, requesting the devotees to adhere to safety guidelines when engaging in religious observances.
Large companies in Sri Lanka have been using the Inland Revenue Department's triple appeal procedure or process to delay paying taxes for up to 5 to 6 years. This was revealed in Parliament yesterday by Chairman of the Committee on Public Accounts, Professor Tissa Vitarana, as he alluded to the committee's comprehensive report. Professor Vitarana cited this as a prime example of the urgent need to change acts and do away with such procedures that only serve to add more pressure on government coffers and ensure that corporates pay up what they owe.
Chairman of the Parliamentary Committee on Public Accounts, Professor Tissa Vitarana, revealed in Parliament yesterday that the committee had, in the process of compiling its first report for the first session of the 9th Parliament, observed both serious irregularities in state institutions as well as instances where specific policies were found to be in need of urgent updating. Beginning his address yesterday, Professor Vitarana cited the Inland Revenue Department's triple appeals process for corporate taxation as a prime example of how companies were abusing the system to avoid paying their dues into government coffers.
Now, with regard to changing of acts, for instance, the Inland Revenue Department, we found that large, powerful companies which have good auditing systems and accounting systems had not paid their inland revenue for 5 years, 6 years and so on. When we looked into the matter, there is provision for them to appeal 3 times to the Inland Revenue Department against the amount that is being asked of them. Now, there is no need for the same department to have 3 boards of appeal. This has dragged on the process. Then at the end of that period, the matter is then taken up in courts also. So there is further delay. So for about 5-6 years, money that should be coming into the government coffers is not taking place. This question of having 3 boards of appeal should be done away with. So I think a change of the act should be done accordingly. 1 appeal is enough.
Further, Professor Vitarana also cited Sri Lanka's human-elephant conflict as the best example of what he termed institutional reluctance to change obviously wrong policies that were causing more damage than good to stakeholders.
During the course of the discussion with the concerned, it was very clear that over the last 9-10 years, the cost has been going up, but at the same time, the number of conflicts also has increased. More human deaths, more elephant deaths. So, obviously, the policy was wrong, because the policy was to try to herd the elephants into a restricted area forest. And when we checked up, we found that only the female elephants and the little ones were getting in. Then after some time, when the food ran out, the animals were starving and dying. The real troublemaker, big elephants, were roaming around, continuing to create trouble. So we pointed out to the ministry officials that this this policy has failed and a new policy should be implemented. And there is a new policy. Dr. Prithviraj Fernando, who has been working with elephants for a long time, has come out with a new policy which is far more sensible. All he said is have the electrified wiring around the villages and around the cultivated areas. Leave the rest of jungle open. And he had tested this out in Galgamu for 7 years. I went there, I saw what had happened, I spoke to the villagers and they said there is no conflict, there is actually a friendship between the elephants and the humans. So this type of reluctance to change obviously wrong policies is also a factor which needs to be corrected.
In conclusion, Professor Vitarna also told Parliament that the comprehensive COPA report contained the ways and means to put an end to the leaks in public finances, which could do a lot in helping the state deal with its massive budget deficit.
Our COPA report, it is comprehensive and it covers a number of faults which, if corrected, Mr. Speaker, it would mean that money that should be coming into the treasury would probably get rid of the budget deficit.
Sri Lanka's top health administrator urges the people not to pick and choose COVID vaccines and opt for whatever jab that is being rolled out in respective localities. He assures that all the vaccines used in the island against the novel coronavirus are approved by the World Health Organization and all of them are very effective against the virus. Meanwhile, there will be a further boost to the country's rapid vaccination program with 2 million doses of the Sinopharm jab expected tomorrow.
Sri Lanka's vaccinations against COVID-19 has crossed the 6 million mark as the authorities are pushing to inoculate the country's over 30 population by September with at least one dose of a vaccine. By last evening, those who have received at least the first dose of a COVID vaccine stood at 6,138,757. From that number, 1,713,686 had been given both doses, making them fully immunized against the novel coronavirus. The pace with which the vaccinations were worked off over the past weeks was more than commendable, and yesterday alone the number of doses given was 255,033. Most of yesterday's inoculations were done with the use of the Moderna vaccine. 130,596 shots were administered as the first dose. Further, 95,037 shots of the Sinopharm vaccine were also given as part of the first dose rollout yesterday, while 12,655 were given as the second dose. 18,745 doses of the Pfizer vaccine were also administered. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka is expecting another consignment of the China-manufactured Sinopharm vaccine tomorrow. 2 million doses are expected to touch down in the morning as part of a purchase order placed by the State Pharmaceuticals Corporation.
It will be distributed to several districts: Matara, Hambantota, Kurunagala, Puttalam, Anuradhapura, Polonnaruwa, Nuwara, Ratnapura, Badulla, Monragala, Ampara and Batticaloa.
What's more, the island is also expecting 1.6 million doses of the Sinopharm vaccine as a donation from China. When the batch will reach Sri Lanka is, however, still uncertain.
It will be distributed again among all districts: Anuradhapura, Polonnaruwa, Nuwara, Ratnapura, Monragala, Ampara, Batticaloa, Trincomalee, Jaffna, Kilinochchi, Mullaitivu and Vavuniya.
The country's topmost health administrator also elaborated on the other COVID vaccines used in the island.
At the moment, Moderna vaccines is distributed in Kandy and Mathare districts. The first dose is given at this moment, and we are expecting another 1.47 million AstraZeneca doses within this month. It will be given as the second dose of the people who have taken the first dose. There is approximately nearly 600,000. And the rest of the doses will be distributed in Kegalle district as the first dose and the second dose of vaccination. And we are receiving another 90,000 Pfizer vaccine on 26th of this month. It will be given as the second dose of Pfizer vaccine who have received the first dose in Puttalam and Mena district.
In the past week, there had been rumors of some people attempting to pick and choose the brand of vaccine. There were reports of some people who had been administered with the AstraZeneca jab, falsifying data and opting for 2 doses of a vaccine from a different brand anew. Certain social media posts also contributed towards unnecessary doubts being planted in the people's minds. In any case, the advice from the health authorities is very clear.
The vaccines which are rolling out at the MOH levels or the district, I urge from the general public not to select any vaccines according to their brands, or whether it is Sinopharm, whether it is Moderna, whether it is Pfizer. Please go and take your vaccine, whatever the vaccine is available in the MOH area, and don't rely on the efficacy or whatever the things which are coming in media or any other document. So all these vaccines were approved by the WHO and the NMRA in this country. All these vaccines are effective to prevent the severe disease as well as the deaths occurring.
Meanwhile, medical health experts once again reiterated that it is essential for children to adhere to preventive measures against COVID-19, as it could lead to complications such as a multi-system inflammatory syndrome. Parents have also been urged not to hesitate in hospitalizing their children if they exhibit COVID-like symptoms, which the experts say will go a long way in protecting them from such complications.
COVID-19 has hit certain age groups much harder than others, and with the onset of the third wave in the island, the risk to children has increased. As things stand, the only way for them to be safe from the virus is not by coming into contact with COVID-19 infected patients. In Sri Lanka, even the vaccine is beyond them for now. As for the global consensus on vaccinating under 18s against the novel coronavirus, many programs are at trial stage with little information available on child vaccinations. Now it emerges that children being infected with COVID are running another risk.
Main discussion that has been taking place is about this new complication that we have been identifying, what is called as multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children, which was actually last year detected and described in UK, and then gradually we also have been experiencing and seeing, and it is mainly a complication related to COVID. It is not an acute situation with the COVID that they are getting. It is about the incidence is identified to be about 1 for every 5,000 children who gets COVID. But the problem is we don't have exact data how many children would have got COVID, because most of them are asymptomatic. So this can spread along every age group from 0 to 21, but mostly it has been seen around 8 to 12 years of age, and especially those who are obese as well as the asthmatic. So the most important thing is that we should be taking preventive measures to avoid contracting COVID, and once a child has any symptoms of any illness, it is important that they seek medical attention, because many parents are scared to take children to hospitals, and one of the key symptoms of multi-system inflammatory syndrome is that the child will have profuse diarrhea, they will be very lethargic, and their blood pressures may go down. So if you bring them on time to the hospital, then of course they can be very easily cured and saved.
The third wave also brought about the need for new behaviors. People continue to be discouraged in gathering at confined spaces with poor ventilation or where air conditions are in operation sans face masks. Office environments run the biggest risk in this regard. As such, it falls on the people to ensure that such premises do not become COVID petri dishes.
All the heads of institutions in our country should take maximum precaution that their institute is maintained as a COVID-free zone. The requirements for hand washing, and somebody is to be appointed by name to look after the application of proper COVID-appropriate behaviors in the institution. I think this will be a very good practice.
As for new daily COVID cases in the island, the caseload has been hovering around the 1,500 mark over the last week. Yesterday's caseload was 1,554, which included 43 foreign arrivals. The highest number of infections came from the Western Province, as has been for quite some time. Its three districts, Colombo, Gampaha and Kalutara, topped the list with 291, 228 and 227 new cases respectively. Outside the Western Province, the highest number of infections came from the Ratnapura district with 173. 96 infections came from Ampara, 72 from Kandy, 55 from Matale, 49 from Kurunagala, while 47 were recorded from Badulla. The remaining 273 infections were confirmed across 16 other districts. In the meantime, Sri Lanka's number of active COVID cases rose to 21,911, with 1,566 new cases being confirmed today. As for the recoveries, the total number now stands at 263,578 as 930 patients were discharged from their treatment centres during the day.
We will see you shortly. Bear with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, owners of rice mills and representatives of cooperative society mills have reached an agreement with the government to purchase paddy harvest during the Yalla season at government stipulated prices. The move comes in the backdrop of the Ministry of Trade's crackdown on rice racketeers engaged in stockpiling and price fixing of rice.
A discussion between Minister of Agriculture Mahindananda Alutgamage, Minister of Trade Dr. Bandulu Gunamarthana and the owners of large-scale, small-scale and cooperative rice mills has resulted in a collective agreement by the millers to purchase paddy from farmers during the Yalla season at government-guaranteed prices. Accordingly, from today, Nadu and Kaklu paddy will be purchased at 50 rupees per kilogram, Samba at 52 rupees per kilogram, Kiri Samba at 55 rupees per kilogram and paddy exceeding the stipulated moisture content at 42 rupees per kilogram. Following the discussions, Trade Minister Dr. Bandulu Gunamarthana warned middlemen engaged in stockpiling and price fixing that rice stocks other than those belonging to mills and farmers will be seized by the authorities once necessary legislation is brought in.
කිසියම් පාර්ශවයක් අතරමැදියෙක් ලෙස වී මිලදීගෙන ජාවාරමක් කිරීමේ යෙදিলা තිබුණා නම් මීට ඉස්සෙල්ලා එය අද සිට නැවැත්විය යුතු වෙනවා. කිසිම කෙනෙකුට වැඩි මිලට වී මිලදී අරගෙන ඊට වඩා වැඩි මිලට විකුණන්න ඉඩ ප්‍රස්තාව මම මේ වෙළඳ අමාත්‍ය ධූරයේ දරනකම් ඉඩ දෙන්නේ නැහැ. අපි ඒ සඳහා අවශ්‍ය අනපනත් සියල්ල සංශෝධනය කරන්න කැබිනට් අනුමැතිය ලබාගෙන තියෙනවා. ගොවීන්ට තමන්ගේ නිෂ්පාදනය රැස් කර තියාගන්න පුළුවන්. වී මෝල් හිමියන්ට තමන්ගේ නිෂ්පාදන ක්‍රියාවලියට අවශ්‍ය තොග රැස් කර තියාගන්න පුළුවන්. එසේ නොවන යම් කිසි තුන්වෙනි පාර්ශවයක් වී තොග රැස් කළොත් මිලදීගෙන ගබඩා කරලා තියාගත්තොත් ඒවා සියල්ල රාජසන්තක කිරීම සඳහා අවශ්‍ය නීති අපි ගේනවා.
In other local stories, the All Ceylon Fisherfolk Trade Union pleads with the government to increase the interim compensation given to small-scale traditional fishermen whose households entirely depend on fishing. State Minister of Coast Conservation Mohan Priyadarshana de Silva today inspected the site of the chartered tanker MV Express Pearl and said that it is the government's intention to provide the maximum compensation possible to the fisherfolk.
The site where the cargo vessel Express Pearl went up in flames was inspected today by State Minister for Coast Conservation and Low-Lying Lands Development Mohan Priyadarshana de Silva and Chairperson of the Marine Environment Protection Authority Darshani Lahandapura. Following the inspection, the State Minister was quizzed as to why the vessel is still at the bottom of Sri Lanka's territorial waters.
තාම නම මම හිතනවා ගෙනියන්න පුළුවන් මට්ටමක නැහැ. ඒක අපිට ඕන විදිහට නම ගෙනියන්න බෑ. ඒ අයගේ විශේෂඥ මතත් එක්ක තමයි කටයුතු කරන්න වෙන්නේ. කොහොමදත් තාමත් මේ අපේ නඩු කටයුත්තක් ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙනවා. අධිකරණයට අවසර ලබාගෙන ඒ කටයුතු කරන්න.
මේ බාරකාර සමාගමත් ඒ වගේම නැව ඉවත් කර ගැනීම සඳහා මේ සර්වේ එක කරන්න නැත්නම් සමීක්ෂණයක් කරන්න කණ්ඩායමක් පැමිණලා තිබෙනවා. ඔවුන් මේ අවස්ථාවේදී සමීක්ෂණය කරන කොයි ආකාරයට කුමන කාලයකදී නැව ඉවත් කර ගත යුතුද කියලා. ඉතින් අපි ඔවුන්ගේ වාර්තාව ලැබෙනකම් බලන් ඉන්නවා.
The MIPA chairperson was also questioned about the latest regarding the compensation process.
පළවෙනි අන්තර් හිමිකම් පෑම නැත්නම් ෆස්ට් ඉන්ටරිම් ක්ලේම් එක විදියට ඩොලර් මිලියන 40ක් ඉල්ලලා එවුවා. ඒකෙන් ඔවුන් අපිට රුපියල් මිලියන 720ක් එහෙම නැත්නම් ඩොලර් මිලියන 3.6ක මුදලක් අපිට ලබා දුන්නා. ඔවුන් කිසිම වෙලාවක ඉතිරි දීමනා ගෙවීම ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කරලා නැහැ. ඔවුන් අපෙන් ඉල්ලා සිටින අනිකුත් දීමනා සඳහා වැඩිදුර විස්තර. දැනට අපි මේ විස්තර ඔවුන්ට දෙන්නට මේ කටයුතු කරමින් තිබෙනවා. ඒ වගේම පරිසර හානිය පිළිබඳ මන්දි ගණනය කිරීමත් සිද්ධ කරමින් පවතිනවා.
Lahandapura was then asked as to what it could be that is holding up the ship being removed from its current location.
ඇත්තටම අපිට වෙන ප්‍රශ්නයක් නම් දැනට මට පේන්නේ නැහැ. මුහුදේ තත්ත්වය රළු බව තමයි මූලික කාරණයක් විදිහට අපිට දැනට ඔවුන් විසින් පවසලා තියෙන්නේ.
As for the fishing community which is affected by the ongoing saga, State Minister of Coast Conservation and Low-Lying Lands Development had this to say.
දීවරන්ගේ ප්‍රශ්න ගැන අපි සාකච්ඡාවක් අපේ සියලු දෙනා සහ දීවර රාජ්‍ය අමාත්‍යතුමත් එක්ක අපි සඳුදා දවල් දාලා තියෙනවා. අපි එතෙන්දී තීන්දුවක් ගන්නවා කරන්නේ මොකක්ද කියන කාරණේ අධිකරු ජනාධිපතිතුමාත් ගරු අගමැතිතුමාත් උපදෙස් ලබා දීලා තියෙන්නේ මේ හානියටපත් වෙච්ච ජනතාවට උපරිම වශයෙන් වන්දි ලබා දෙන්න කියන කාරණේ. ඉතින් එතෙන්දී අපි කිසිම පැකිලීමකින් තොරව අගතියටපත් වෙච්ච අපේ ජනතාවට වන්දි ලබා දීමේ කටයුත්ත ඉතාම ඉක්මනින් නොපමාව කරනවා කියන කාරණේ කියනවා.
Meanwhile, the All Ceylon Fisherfolk Trade Union expressed their grievances during a media briefing today. Their plea was that the government increase the 20,000 rupee interim compensation provided to the small-scale traditional fishermen whose households are totally dependent on fisheries activities.
Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, financial penalties have been imposed by the central bank on 2 institutions for non-compliance with the provisions of the Financial Transactions Reporting Act. It said that the Financial Intelligence Unit imposed penalties amounting to 3 million rupees in total for the period from the 1st of April 2021 to the 30th of June 2021 to enforce compliance on financial institutions. The Union Bank Colombo PLC has been fined 2 million rupees on the 28th of May, while the DFCC Bank PLC has been fined 1 million rupees on the 31st of May. The central bank says that the penalties were imposed mainly on the violations of financial institutions' customer due diligence rules and several other aspects. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.